Have you ever trusted a smile only to feel, deep down, that something wasn't right? A warmth that seemed too perfect, too effortless, as if it was hiding something beneath. Most people dismiss that unease. They tell themselves it's paranoia, imagination, weakness. But Nietzsche wouldn't. He would say you've just brushed against a truth most men spend their lives running from, because Nietzsche believed woman is not what society wants you to see. Behind the mask of innocence lies instinct, ancient, cunning, relentless. Not cruelty, but survival. Not weakness, but a subtle form of power sharpened over centuries. And the real danger is not in her smile, it is in your blindness to it. This is the world Nietzsche unmasked, where purity is performance, where romance is illusion, and where men destroy themselves not because of women, but because of the fantasies they demand women play. And tonight, on Mythos, we step into that shadow, into the dangerous side of female nature that Nietzsche dissected with merciless clarity, not to hate, not to fear, but to finally see. If you want more explorations like this, deep dives into philosophy, psychology, and the truths most are too afraid to touch, subscribe to Mythos. Turn on the bell so you never miss what lies beneath the surface. A smile. That is where it begins. A curve of the lips, effortless, disarming, an ancient signal of warmth and safety. It is the first gesture we learn as infants, the first reassurance we receive from a mother's face. Yet beneath that familiar softness lies something Nietzsche refused to ignore. He called it instinct, sharpened, relentless, and more dangerous than the world dares admit. For centuries, society has painted woman as the embodiment of innocence, a symbol of purity draped in cultural myth. Poets wrote verses about her softness. Artists sculpted her as divine grace. Philosophers, at least those unwilling to see, called her the gentler sex. But Nietzsche tore through those illusions with a scalpel's precision. He did not see innocence. He saw strategy. He saw survival. The smile to him was not merely an ornament. It was a mask. And like all masks, it concealed more than it revealed. What looked like sweetness was in fact the disguise of instinct, the will to life operating in silence. Behind the soft expression, Nietzsche saw a biological machine older than morality itself, a force honed not for fairness, not for virtue, but for endurance. And it is here that man, he warned, is most blind. He sees only the surface. He longs for purity, for the fairy tale, for the delicate ideal he has built in his imagination. He does not want to believe that the smile is calculated, that innocence can itself be a weapon. He dismisses his suspicions, comforts himself with illusions, and in doing so walks willingly into danger. Nietzsche's rejection of idealized femininity was not hatred. It was diagnosis. He insisted that to survive, man must strip away the charm, the sweetness, the appearance of harmlessness. For in that appearance lives the greatest threat, the refusal to see. And when instincts are ignored, when masks are mistaken for truth, blindness becomes calm. Every society, Nietzsche observed, is a theater. People act, roles are assigned, scripts are memorized. But no actor plays the role more flawlessly than woman. To Nietzsche, her performance was not vanity nor mere protection. It was weaponry. The mask was not placed on her face by accident. It was sharpened by centuries of survival, refined into an art form, perfected as strategy. The mask of innocence, soft and fragile in appearance, concealed an arsenal. It allowed her to move unseen in corridors of power, to influence without detection, to survive without exposure. While men believed themselves to be the authors of history with their wars and their monuments, Nietzsche saw a parallel history unfolding in silence, one built on appearances, on masks so convincing that men mistook them for truth. The brilliance of the mask was not in hiding reality, but in creating a reality more desirable than the truth itself. A smile that promised devotion, a glance that suggested purity, a silence that seemed submissive. These were not weaknesses. They were performances. And men, blinded by their own longing, became enthralled not with the person before them, but with the mask she wore. Nietzsche's critique cut mercilessly. Men do not love women as they are. They love the masks they project onto them. They marry illusions, worship appearances, cling to ideals that never existed. And in that blindness, they become victims of their own imagination. What they call love, Nietzsche implied, is often nothing more than a bargain with deception, a willing surrender to the mask. The forensic detail of his analysis was chilling. The mask does not merely conceal, it transforms perception itself. Once a man accepts it, he cannot see beyond it. The deception becomes self-sustaining, reinforced by his desire to believe. In this way, Nietzsche argued, woman became the master of appearances. Strip away the masks, Nietzsche urged, and what remains is not purity, not virtue, not reason. What remains is instinct. And woman, he argued, is the living embodiment of that instinct. Cunning, adaptive, relentless. She does not move according to abstract ideals or lofty philosophies. She moves according to life itself, the will to survive, the will to endure. For Nietzsche, this will to life was not metaphor. It was a biological truth. Men, he noted, are seduced by ideals, honor, morality, justice, romance. They are willing to die for visions that exist only in imagination. Woman, in contrast, does not die for illusions. She survives them. Her calculations are grounded in the real, the tangible, the possible. Her instinct is not distracted by dreams of eternity. It is sharpened by the immediacy of survival. Instinct, Nietzsche believed, is older than reason. It predates every philosophy, every religion, every social rule we cling to. It is the machinery that operates beneath consciousness, the silent hand that guides choice before thought even forms. And in woman, that machinery is not hidden by ideals. It is embraced. Her cunning is not accidental. It is nature's design. Why did women develop sharper survival strategies? Nietzsche traced it to vulnerability made into strength. Deprived of brute force, denied the weapons of war, woman adapted. She honed subtler tools, perception, timing, seduction, endurance. Where man sought to conquer with violence, woman conquered with survival. One burned fast in glory, the other endured quietly in shadows. And in the end, endurance always outlives glory. The tension between male idealism and female pragmatism is stark. One builds castles in the air. The other ensures there is bread on the table. One clings to illusions of purity. The other ensures bloodlines continue. Nietzsche's verdict was clinical. Reason is fragile, but instinct is eternal. Civilization may crumble, ideals may fade, but instinct will remain. And it is here, in this dissection, that Nietzsche shifted his focus. Instinct, he argued, does not remain buried. It is not passive. It seeks expression, not in brute force, but in influence. The cunning of survival, once perfected, becomes something more, a subtle weapon of power. And it is toward this weapon, invisible, patient, devastating, that Nietzsche's scalpel next turns. Power is not always loud. It does not always march in armies or write its name on monuments. Sometimes power moves silently, unseen, in whispers and glances. Nietzsche understood this distinction better than most. While men measured power in empires and swords, he saw a quieter force at work, one embodied by women, whose weapons were not forged of iron, but of instinct. Seduction, persuasion, manipulation. These were the tools honed over centuries. Where men wielded brute force, women perfected subtlety. It was not weakness, it was adaptation. The battlefield was not open terrain, but the human psyche itself, And here, woman was often the superior strategist. History provides the evidence Nietzsche dissected. Cleopatra, who bent the Roman Empire, not with armies, but with presence. Helen of Troy, whose beauty launched a war that armies could not contain. Salome, who demanded the head of a prophet and received it. These figures were not accidents. They were archetypes, living proof that power does not need swords when it can command through desire, illusion, and fear. Seduction in this sense was not romance, it was strategy, a calculated weapon aimed at the instincts of men, instincts Nietzsche believed made them vulnerable. Men crave the illusion of control, yet they surrender to appearances. They believe themselves conquerors, yet are undone by the very forces they dismiss as harmless. To Nietzsche, this was not tragedy, it was inevitability. The menace of this power lies in its invisibility. You cannot defend yourself against what you refuse to see. A blade can be blocked, an army can be resisted, but influence operates like poison, invisible, tasteless, lethal when ignored. Nietzsche's warning was clinical and severe. Men who underestimate female power do so at their own peril. This subtle weapon, honed by survival and instinct, does not declare war. It waits. It charms. It disarms. And by the time its presence is recognized, the damage is already irreversible. Here the battlefield changes. No longer is it about swords and crowns. It becomes a war of illusions, a contest between appearances and truth, between masks and blindness. Nietzsche's scalpel now points toward the men who walk willingly into this trap, victims not only of women's cunning, but of their own illusions. A crime is never committed by one hand alone. There is the attacker, and there is the victim who opens the door. Nietzsche's analysis of men and women followed this same forensic logic. If women wielded masks and instincts as weapons, it was because men invited them to. The real scandal, he argued, was not female cunning, but male naivety. A weakness disguised as romance, a blindness disguised as virtue. Men do not merely fall into deception. They crave it. They want to believe in purity, in innocence untouched by the raw machinery of nature. They long for the angel rather than the strategist, the muse rather than the survivor. And in this craving, they hand over their defenses willingly. What they call love, Nietzsche implied, is often a pact with illusion. It is less about knowing a woman than about clinging to the fantasy she represents. Nietzsche's critique of romantic ideals was merciless. To him, men idolize what does not exist. They sculpt illusions of chastity, of devotion, of eternal fidelity, illusions that serve not women, but their own desperate need to escape the brutality of reality. The irony is brutal. In worshipping the mask, man becomes the accomplice of his own undoing. Consider the dynamic clinically. Woman wears the mask, man demands it. She offers the illusion. He insists upon it. The weapon only cuts because the victim insists on grasping the blade. Nietzsche's verdict is chilling in its simplicity. Woman does not destroy man. He destroys himself by refusing to see. The psychology behind this is as old as survival itself. Men chase ideals of love and sacrifice, willing to burn for visions that nature never promised. Women, sharpened by instinct, oblige those illusions. They provide the mask because it works. The tragedy is not in the deception, but in the hunger for it. Thus, the courtroom of Nietzsche's philosophy reaches its cruel judgment. Anne is not an innocent victim, but a willing participant in his downfall. His blindness, his romanticism, his craving for purity make him complicit in the very power he fears. From here, Nietzsche's dissection pushes deeper, beyond culture, beyond psychology, into the biological game itself. For if men fall willingly, perhaps it is because nature designed them to. And if women wield instinct as weapon, perhaps it is because nature demands they must. Culture, Nietzsche argued, is only the costume. Beneath it, the machinery of life moves with ruthless precision. Woman, to him, was not merely a social figure or a romantic projection. She was nature embodied, the raw will of life given form, cunning in its methods, merciless in its aims, to survive, to reproduce, to outlast. Biology is the battlefield where this truth is written. Men imagine themselves conquerors, but Nietzsche saw them as expendable foot soldiers in nature's greater campaign. They burn fast, chasing ideals of glory and sacrifice. Women, by contrast, carry continuity itself. Their strategies are sharpened, not by fantasies, but by necessity. Where men gamble with lives, women safeguard bloodlines. Where men dream of ideals, women calculate survival. Selection itself is her advantage. In the biological economy, woman becomes the gatekeeper, choosing, rejecting, ensuring that the strongest seed passes forward, while the weaker is extinguished. Nietzsche called this her hidden sovereignty, not through armies or decrees, but through the silent verdicts of reproduction. In this sense, woman is not merely a participant in nature's game, she is its guardian. The contrast is stark, almost cruel. Man, blinded by ideals, often throws himself at death for abstractions, honor, justice, glory. Woman, sharpened by instinct, invests in what endures, survival, children, the future. Her pragmatism is not weakness. It is strategy at the deepest level of biology. Nietzsche's tone was clinical. If one sex builds castles in the air, the other ensures there is still earth to stand on. This ruthless game strips away sentiment. What appears as charm or innocence is, under Nietzsche's scalpel, revealed as function. What looks like devotion is adaptation. What men mistake for purity is often nature's disguise, concealing a far older agenda, life's relentless will to continue, at any cost. In this light, Nietzsche's analysis becomes merciless. Woman is not the weaker vessel, but nature's sharper tool, forged in the crucible of survival. And men, clinging to illusions, mistake themselves as rulers, when in fact, they are pawns, blinded by ideals, while instincts quietly dictate the outcome. Yet biology alone is not the whole story. Its truths echo beyond the body, bleeding into myth, legend, and cultural memory. To understand how deeply this instinctual game is etched into the human psyche, Nietzsche turned next to the myths of the dangerous woman, archetypes that haunt civilizations like shadows of truth. Long before Nietzsche put scalpel to philosophy, cultures whispered warnings of women whose beauty concealed ruin. These figures did not belong to the world of ordinary wives and daughters. They were shadows, half worshipped, half feared, embodiments of instincts too raw for society to name. Nietzsche recognized them not as fantasies, but as mirrors of a deeper truth. Woman as power, veiled in beauty. Lilith, banished from Eden, refused submission, and became a symbol of rebellion against man's authority. To theologians, she was a demon. To Nietzsche, she was something older, instinct unwilling to bow to morality. Her seduction and destruction were not sins, but survival strategies elevated into myth. Medea, betrayed, did not fade quietly. She turned her fury into annihilation, killing her own children to wound the man who had abandoned her. Civilization recoiled from her, yet her story endured precisely because it revealed what society fears most: that beneath the mask of devotion lies an instinct capable of vengeance without limit. Circe the sorceress turned men into swine with a gesture. A myth, yes, but one that exposed a recurring terror. That female allure was not harmless, but transformative, reducing men to beasts under its spell. Nietzsche would have seen this not as fantasy, but as allegory. The power of appearances, of seduction, of instinct, made flesh in story so it could be feared without being named. Across cultures, the pattern repeats. Dangerous women are demonized, yet they are unforgettable. They are condemned, yet they are worshipped. This contradiction, Nietzsche argued, is no accident. Myths preserve truths too unsettling for philosophy alone. They encode psychological realities that logic cannot sanitize. And in every myth of the femme fatale, Nietzsche saw confirmation. Woman's instinct, cunning, and survival has always unsettled man's illusions. The cultural fear was not of weakness, but of strength hidden in softness, of power that did not announce itself, but emerged in betrayal, seduction, or silence. Myth served as a warning, but also as reluctant reverence. Men feared these figures because, at some level, they knew them to be real. But myths do not remain confined to the past. The archetypes survive, reshaped and repackaged, wearing modern masks. Nietzsche's insight now points forward, from Circe's potions to cinema screens, from Lilith's rebellion to today's illusions of romance and purity. The dangerous woman never vanished. She simply learned to wear new disguises. The world has changed. Empires have fallen. Technologies have advanced. Entire cultures have reshaped themselves. Yet Nietzsche would insist that beneath the polished glass of modern life, nothing essential has shifted. Instincts do not vanish. They only adapt. And woman's instinct, sharpened through centuries of survival, wears new masks in the present age. Masks more sophisticated, more polished, but no less dangerous. Consider courtship. Once it was veiled in ritual, dances, arranged meetings, dowries. Now it plays out on dating apps, in curated profiles, in photographs designed to signal innocence or allure. Yet the mechanics remain the same. Appearances crafted, illusions maintained, instincts guiding the performance. What once was a smile across a ballroom is now a filtered image on a glowing screen. Nietzsche would not be fooled. He would call it the same play. Updated costumes, identical script. The media, too, becomes an accomplice. Romantic comedies, advertisements, even social media feeds reinforce the illusion of purity and devotion. The narratives men crave are still provided, only now on a global scale. Women adapt to these narratives, perform them, inhabit them, not out of falsehood, but out of instinctual strategy. The mask of innocence remains, only now it is broadcast in high definition. Nietzsche's relevance here is cutting. Men, he argued, are as blind today as they were in his century. They consume the illusions eagerly, mistaking performance for reality, appearance for essence. They want the archetype of purity, the dream of devotion, the fantasy of the ideal partner, untouched by calculation. And women, strategic as ever, provide the mask that keeps the dream alive. Instinct has simply evolved. Where once it moved in whispers and veils, now it operates through algorithms and performances of self. But the biological machinery, Nietzsche would insist, has not altered. Woman adapts because survival demands it. Man falls because blindness ensures it. Modernity has not erased the ancient game. It has only modernized its stage. The truth, clinical and merciless, is that the dangerous side of female instinct did not belong to history. It belongs to the present. And if Nietzsche were here to witness the glowing screens, the curated images, the rituals of modern romance, his verdict would remain the same. The mask is stronger, the illusion more convincing, and men are still complicit in their own deception. This prepares the ground for Nietzsche's most unsettling twist. The danger is not in her masks at all. It is in his blindness. The knife, Nietzsche argued, is never the true killer. It is the hand that holds it, the mind that welcomes it, the blindness that refuses to see it coming. In the same way, the danger of woman does not lie in her smile, her mask, or her instinct. The real danger lies within man himself, in his hunger for illusions, in his desperate need to believe what is not there. It is not her deception that ruins him. It is his demand to be deceived. He wants the fantasy of purity, the dream of innocence, the eternal muse untouched by calculation. He constructs these ideals with feverish devotion, sculpting illusions more elaborate than any mask she could craft on her own. Nietzsche's scalpel cuts through the excuse. Woman plays her role, but man writes the script. And it is that script which destroys him. Truth, Nietzsche warned, is painful. It strips away comfort. It burns through illusions and leaves the raw machinery of life exposed. Most men cannot endure it. They prefer the narcotic of fantasy, the anesthesia of romance, the dream of devotion. But illusion, he declared, is not harmless. It is fatal. Every time a man surrenders to it, he blinds himself willingly, stepping closer to ruin under the pretense of love. The forensic record is clear. Woman offers a mask, but only because man insists on it. She embodies instinct, but only because man refuses to see beyond appearances. The real betrayal is self-betrayal. The true danger is not external. It is internal. Nietzsche's philosophy here is not a warning about women at all, but about the catastrophic blindness of men. To awaken is to strip away this comfort, to see without illusions, to face instincts and masks for what they are. It is not an act of hatred, but of survival. To persist in fantasy is to remain prey. To confront reality, however cruel, is the first step toward freedom. The destruction, Nietzsche concludes, is never in her smile. It was always in his need to believe it. And once this truth is exposed, there is only one path forward, to replace blindness with sight. That is the preparation for resolution, empowerment, not through denial, but through vision unclouded. Nietzsche's lesson was never hatred. Hatred is just another mask, another blindness. His lesson was clarity, to see woman not as the fantasy man craves, not as the fragile ornament society paints, but as what she truly is: dangerous, instinctive, cunning. To see this without illusion is not to despise her, but to finally respect her. Respect, for Nietzsche, was born not from worship, but from recognition. The recognition that woman's instinct is not weakness, but strategy, that her masks are not falsehoods but survival, that her subtle power is no accident but the expression of life's will itself. To reduce her to purity or pedestal is to insult her. To see her in her fullness, sharp, strategic, unrelenting, is to stand before her as equal, no longer prey, but counterpart. The balance of power begins in awareness. When man strips away his own illusions, the game changes. He is no longer blinded by fantasies of innocence or purity. He sees the mask for what it is, the instinct for what it does. And in that vision, he ceases to be complicit in his downfall. He steps out of the role of victim, out of the posture of naivety, and into the stance of one who sees without trembling. Nietzsche's call is merciless, but liberating. Embrace the raw truth of nature. Stop clinging to ideals that were always lies. Stop mistaking illusions for devotion. Accept that life is struggle, that survival is cunning, that power is not always loud. In this confrontation, Nietzsche believed, lies the beginning of strength. The dangerous side of woman is not a curse placed upon man. It is a fact of life. To deny it is to remain weak. To acknowledge it is to unlock resilience. In the cold clarity of Nietzsche's philosophy, empowerment arrives not as comfort, but as awakening. The audience is left unsettled because the truth is unsettling, but stronger because strength begins where illusion ends. Nietzsche leaves no room for softness, only for sight. The choice is stark. Remain blind and be devoured by your own fantasies, or see, and finally stand equal to the dangerous beauty before you. You see it now, don't you? The smile that cuts, the mask that hides, the instinct that waits. Not a curse, not a crime, but nature itself, playing its oldest game. And Nietzsche's warning is clear. The true danger was never her. It was always you, your blindness, your hunger for illusions, your need to believe in masks that were never meant to protect you. But sight is power. When you strip away the fantasy, when you face instinct without trembling, you stop being prey. You become equal, and in that equality lies the first taste of freedom. Cold, unsettling, but real. This is what Nietzsche left us with. Not hatred, not despair, but the courage to see, to look past comfort and confront what lies beneath. And if you can bear that vision, you are already stronger than most. Here on Mind Mythos, we will keep tearing away the illusions. Philosophy, psychology, myth, and the shadows history left behind. Because only when you see clearly can you stand unbroken. So if you felt the weight of this truth, subscribe. Share this story. Join us as we continue to unmask the dangerous, the hidden, the forgotten. Because this is only the beginning.